What's the story, Morning Glory? What is up, Buttercup? Thank you so much for clicking on my channel and for joining me for a quick conversation on the very tragic and sad case of a young girl who disappeared in 2008 by the name of Yasmin Acree. So, when I started reading about this case and as I got deeper into it, it just really broke my heart on how tragic and sad her situation was, and how so many people in her life who were supposed to be there to protect her ended up failing her. So, Yasmin Acree was a young girl who was born to a drug addicted mother. And because her mother was suffering from substance abuse, she couldn't properly care for Yasmin or her brother, Demarcus. Her brother and her ended up in foster care, and they went from foster care to foster care, and they would be bounced back and forth between the foster care system and their mother's home as well. Finally, Yasmin and her brother Demarcus ended up in the home of a relative. I had read an article that the mother really wanted her children to be placed with someone within the family, and so they were placed with an aunt. This was an aunt that was related to Yasmin and her brother through marriage, not by blood, but by marriage. So they went into this aunt's residence back in 2001 as foster care kids, and eventually in 2006, this particular woman, her name was Rose May Starnes, ended up adopting both Yasmin and her brother in 2006. Now, Rose May claimed that she did love Yasmin and her brother, but because of the emotional and physical abuse that the children suffered while they were in foster care and in their mother's home, they came with a lot of emotional and behavioral issues that I think Rose May had a hard time handling, had a hard time dealing with. By all accounts, it seemed that Rose May did her best to be a proper parent for the children, but there were incidents of what I would consider abuse. She would beat them with belts. She would lock Yasmin in her bedroom. Yasmin had a bedroom in the basement of the building that they lived in the basement of the residence that they stayed at. Now, the entire building, which was an apartment complex with, I think, maybe 4 units, possibly three, but I think 4 units. It was an apartment complex that was actually owned by Rose Starnes. She actually owned the whole building, and she had tenants in this building. Now, in the basement of the residence that Yasmin and her brother lived in, that basement was Yasmin's bedroom, and there was actually a door that would lead from the outside into her bedroom. Now, when Demarcus was 16 years old, Rose Starnes ended up asking him to leave. Well, to put it bluntly, she basically kicked the boy out. And when he got kicked out of the home, Yasmin started to slowly decline a little bit. She was doing really well up until about the 8th grade. She was a star student, an excellent student. She was actually salutarian of her 8th grade graduating class. But when her brother was no longer living with them after the brother got kicked out, when she started high school, her grades began to suffer, and it seemed like she wasn't doing as well. Now, on January the 15th, 2008, Yasmin was a freshman at Austin Polytech Academy, and on that particular day, she went to school. After school, she went to the YMCA. After the YMCA, she came home, she did a load of laundry, and then she went to sleep. Like I said before, Yasmin's bedroom was located in the basement. Now, at this particular time, I think between the 15th and the 16th, Rose was on a trip. She had taken a trip with her own adult daughter to the casinos, and I think she was going to be gone for a couple of days. Yasmin was left home with Rose's live-in boyfriend, Charles Burt. So the 15th is when she went to school, went to the Y, came home, did a load of laundry, and went to bed. The next day, which was January the 16th, 2008, Charles Bart assumed that Yasmin had gotten up really early that day and had gone to school. Now, he had noticed that there was a break in of the residence. There was an outside fence which had a lock, and that lock, it had two locks actually. Those two locks were broken, and the lock to Yasmin's bedroom, to the door that led to Yasmin's bedroom in the basement, that lock was also broken. And Yasmin's bed appeared to not have been slept in. So when he noticed that there was this possible break in, he contacted Rose May, and she was away on her trip. Supposedly, her phone was not working, so he didn't talk to her directly, but he left her a message about the possible break in. Now, at the casinos, Rose May had won $6,000 at the casinos. And on her way back home, she had stopped to buy a new phone. And I guess that's when she had heard the message. She contacted Charles Burt and told him, well, if the locks were broken, that he should go ahead and buy new locks for the property, which he did. I'm not sure exactly what happened to the old locks, but he did buy the new locks, and supposedly he had placed the new locks to replace the broken ones. So when Rose May came home, I think it was on the 16th. Don't quote me on the dates, but I think it was on the 16th when she returned back home. On that particular day, they thought that Yasmin had gone to school and that she would be home at a regular time. Well, she never came home at a regular time, and then as the hours went on, she still hadn't shown up, and I think that's when they called the authorities. So in her bedroom, like I'd mentioned before, it appeared that her bed had not been slept in, and her glasses were also left behind, and supposedly she needed the glasses to see clearly. I wasn't able to determine if she had to wear the glasses continuously or if she just wore them on and off. I really wasn't sure, but one article did mention her glasses being left behind, as if to make a point that she possibly did need her glasses and she would not have left without them. So when law enforcement showed up, they didn't take any fingerprints. I'm assuming that Bert and Rose had told law enforcement about the break-in, but they didn't take any fingerprints. They didn't really investigate the break-in. They didn't take pictures of anything. They kind of just they treated the break-in and the disappearance of Yasmin as two separate issues, and they just concluded that Yasmin had run away from home. Now, my understanding was the reason why law enforcement assumed that she had ran away from home was because when they investigated, I guess some of her friends or classmates that knew her, two classmates had told law enforcement that Yasmin had ran away from home. But later, these same two classmates had recanted their whole runaway story and said that they lied about it, that they had lied about Yasmin running away. But it seemed like for whatever reason, once that was mentioned, or I don't know why the law enforcement, they stuck with this whole she ran away theory, but that is basically what they stuck with and didn't investigate this as any kind of possible criminal activity. Now, my question is, if a child of 15 years old runs away from home, wouldn't law enforcement still be involved in trying to locate them? Because even though they might have left voluntarily, which I don't think Yasmin ran away from home, but even if they had left voluntarily, this is a 15-year-old child who cannot really survive on their own in the streets like that. And even if they could, that's not where they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be at home with their guardian. Why wouldn't they have made a bigger effort in trying to locate her, even if she was a runaway? But it seemed as if they kind of just dismissed everything as a runaway and kind of just left it at that. Now, in this apartment building that Yasmin was living in, and the apartment building that was owned by her adoptive mother, Rose, there lived a gentleman there who was an ex-con. This particular gentleman was also a friend of Rose May. This particular gentleman, I did not catch his name, but he had a son who had just been released from prison after serving 10 years for attempted murder. This particular son went by the name of Jimmy Terrell Smith. Now, Jimmy Terrell Smith lived in the same apartment complex as Yasmin. He was an ex-con who sold drugs, who carried guns, and evidently some reports stated that he had shown an interest in Yasmin. Now, Yasmin's room had been searched, and they did find a diary. I don't know if it was searched by law enforcement or by Rose May or exactly who, but her room had been searched and her diary had been found. And in her diary, Yasmin had made mention of this Jimmy Terrell Smith 2 times in her diary. Now, I read an article that said that when she did mention Jimmy Terrell Smith in her diary, she referred to him as Tyrell, and she spelled his name Tyrell, but his middle name is Terrell, and it's spelled Terrel. Now, I don't know if this article was assuming that maybe this was not the same Jimmy Terrell Smith, but they just made, or maybe she just didn't know how to spell his name. Maybe he went by Terrell or Tyrell, and that's what everybody referred to him as. I don't know, but they did make a mention of how she misspelled his name. And I don't know if he went by Terrell or Tyrell, or if he went by Jimmy, or what name he went by. So she does mention him 2 times in her diary, and the article mentioned that she mentioned him in a way as if they had some type of a friendship, relationship, or an associateship, something to that effect, because she had said that she had missed Terrell or she had missed Tyrell. So this particular person, Jimmy Terrell Smith, let's talk about him for a little bit. Like I said, he was an ex-con. Ever since he was released from prison in 2005, he had been arrested 6 times since then. And like I said before, he sold drugs, he carried guns, he was an ex-con, and I don't know how he had escaped the law, with these type of activities and this type of behavior, but he did. There were accounts that he did find an interest to Yasmin, like I said before. So, moving forward, 2009, Jimmy Terrell Smith was arrested for raping 5 females. 2 of them were 14 years old. He was also charged for attempted murder because he played Russian roulette with a gun with one of his victims. While he was awaiting trial in jail, he actually attacked his own defense attorney in the jailhouse as he was handcuffed. He was handcuffed, and he still managed to attack his own defense attorney by hitting him, I think, in the back of the head, to the point where he needed medical attention. He didn't pass out. He wasn't unconscious, but he did need medical attention. And of course, when this happened, they added these charges to his already existing charges of rape and assault. Law enforcement did admit, the Chicago Police Department, they did admit that they had botched the case. They, like I said before, they looked at it as a runaway. They didn't really investigate the break-in. And yeah. So Jimmy Terrell Smith claimed that he had killed 3 other women after he was paroled in 2005, and he had stated that taking a person's life is the easiest thing in the world. He allegedly stated that he knew what happened to Yasmin. According to Jimmy Terrell Smith, he claims that Yasmin had committed suicide and that he had assisted her in doing it. The reason why no charges were ever brought against him for the disappearance and or possible death of Yasmin was because there just wasn't enough evidence. But my question is this: how do they know if there wasn't enough evidence if in the beginning they didn't even treat this as any kind of crime? They just treated it as a runaway. In 2000, he ended up serving a 100-year sentence because along with his rape convictions, his assault convictions, he was given a sentence for all of that. But while he was imprisoned for those crimes, he had attempted to hire a hitman to kill the judge who convicted him of his previous assault charges. And once he got convicted of that crime, his sentence added up to 100 years behind bars. Rose May kept hoping for Yasmin's safe return until her death of natural causes in 2014 at the age of 57. And I also believe Yasmin's biological mother had also passed away at some point. Police have claimed that there was never been enough evidence to charge Jimmy Smith with the disappearance and or death of Yasmin because they needed her remains and more proof that would allow them to charge him for her disappearance and her possible death. The Chicago Police Department said that this case is still an open case. There is still a $10,000 reward for any information that would lead to the resolution of this case. Now, the reason why this case stands out to me is because it is really heartbreaking to read a story or to hear about a story about a child who is defenseless, cannot do anything to defend themselves, and this child relies on so many adults to be there for them, to protect them, and all of these adults completely failed her. and now she's gone. No one knows what happened to her. No one knows if she's dead or alive. It is still a mystery. And I'm pretty sure it's pretty obvious that she has been a victim of some horrible crime, and whoever did this to her probably will never be brought to justice because law enforcement completely dropped the ball. Now, Yasmin Acree was let down by her own mother because her mother was addicted to drugs, couldn't properly take care of her, had to give her up to the state. She was failed by the foster care system because in the various foster care homes that she was placed in, she suffered serious physical, emotional, and mental abuse. She was failed by her she was failed by her adoptive mother, Rose Mae Starnes. I believe, it's my personal opinion, that Rose Mae Starnes also failed Yasmin because beating her with a belt, locking her in her room, I mean, I don't think that this is proper discipline for a child who's been through absolutely, she's just been through hell and back. She's emotionally damaged. Her whole life has been a complete nightmare. The fact that she was able to succeed in school up until the 8th grade, and I understand that it's had a lot to do with Rose Mae. Her being a success in school had a lot to do with Rose Mae. Rose Mae did give her stability, did give her love, did provide for her and care for her. No problem. I have no problem admitting that. Yes, that's all of that is true. But I just don't think that beating children with belts and locking them in rooms is discipline. I think that's abuse, because if you were to do that to an adult who didn't do what you wanted them to do, who didn't listen to you, you'd go to jail. So I believe that she was also in some ways failed by Rose Mae Starnes, if these allegations of abuse were true. And a child who's been through all kinds of, abuse, various forms of abuse, I don't think it's a good idea. I'm not saying that Charles Burt would have harmed Rose Mae or would have done anything. I'm not saying that at all, but I don't think as a parent or a guardian of a child who's been traumatized, throughout her whole life, I wouldn't feel comfortable leaving them with a male when more than likely she had been victimized by various males in her life. So I would not have left her alone with my live-in boyfriend. I'm not alleging or assuming that the boyfriend hasn't had any kind of propensity of harming her. I'm just saying that from the point of view of a child who's probably been victimized by men, I would not have left her alone with my live-in boyfriend. But that's what happened, and something happened that night. To this child. She didn't just get up and walk away and decide to start a new life at the age of 15. Someone took her, someone hurt her, most likely someone killed her. And what's absolutely unacceptable is that justice may never be served for this poor, helpless child who just wanted a normal life but was constantly failed by the people around her who were supposed to be there to protect her. The biggest culprit is law enforcement, because whatever happened to her happened to her. We can't change that. We can't rewind time and make it not happen anymore. But at least we could bring to justice the person who ultimately victimized her. Now, they just treated this as a runaway. I hate to say this, but they probably just saw, oh, it's just another young black child. They ran away from home. Let's move on to something else. Instead of opening up their eyeballs and seeing that, okay, she didn't come home from school. It's unusual for her to not come home from school. She doesn't have a history of running away. There are locks all over the place that are broken on this property. The door that led into her bedroom was broken into. There was some type of forced entry on the door that led into her bedroom. But yeah, we'll just go ahead and treat this as a runaway case and, go about our business. Absolutely unacceptable. I don't know if her family, what repercussions that they could take against the city or against the police department. If I don't know if they've looked into that, but I would think that, but for them not investigating the break-in as a crime and connecting the break-in with the disappearance of a 15-year-old child, they should have done more. They were supposed to do more. It was expected of them to do more, but they didn't. It's a really tragic case, and I just hope that one day her family do find the answers that they've been seeking and that there will be resolution to this case, because we've heard of cases that have been unsolved for 20, 25, 30 years, and then, it just takes one little clue to, shut it all down. And I hope that that will be the case for Yasmin Acree. May she rest in peace. Thank you so much for joining me. If you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe, and I will definitely talk to you later.